You're muted. You're muted, Stephen.
Can you hear me now?
Now, yes.
Yes.
Wonderful. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Listen, there might be just a small delay in the communication on my end because I'm working two systems. However, I believe we'll still be able to get through this. I'm going to ask and welcome everyone that is live with us right now. Thank you for joining us. You are tuning into a live discussion where we are going to be talking about all things church and all things business as we're getting ready for our Black Church and Black Business Summit on March 29th, 2025, beginning at 10 a.m. That is just a few days from now. And I'm so excited about what we have to offer you during that summit. But most importantly, I'm excited about tonight because we have some amazing guests, as you can see, that are with us. And we're going to first, again, ask that you can do me the favor. If you can help me by sharing this, um, sharing this presentation, and liking this presentation with your friends and your family, because you do not want to miss what we're getting ready to talk about tonight. All right, let's jump right into our conversation. Listen, I want to begin by introducing our guests. We have right next to me on the screen my dear sister. She's a big sister to me, Miss Renee Williams. She is hailed from Tallahassee, Florida. We also have Pastor Daniel Ings, who is out of Orlando, Florida. We've got Pastor Darrick McGhee, again, right here in the beautiful city of Tallahassee. We've got Dr. Tammy Anderson, who is in the beautiful city of Panama City slash Springfield, Florida. Amen. And
Amen.
we also have my friend and brother who will be co-moderating this panel with me tonight, my brother, Minister Brandon Johnson. Again, I'm excited about tonight. I'm excited to listen and to learn from these experts in the field of business and church. Okay, so let's get started, and we're going to go into some brief introduction. And I'm going to start with Renee. If you would give us a little bit of taste of who you are and what do you do, and we'll go from Renee to Pastor Ings, Pastor McGhee, Dr. Anderson.
Okay. Thank you. I am Renee Williams, and I am the pastor whisperer, if you will. I help pastors, I help clergy take care of their ministry while we take care of them. So that involves everything from logistics to leadership training to IRS matters to offering and all grants and foundations and everything that it takes to make the business of the church run, because we do know that church is a business. So everything it takes to make the business run in a godly way. And then God has graced me to learn how and take that over into the marketplace. So I really have a marketplace ministry, but my focus is really on nonprofits and pastors and clergy. And I've been doing this now for 26 years.
Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you, Pastor Renee. I am Daniel Ings, the founder and director of Boys to Men Mentoring Program. Started this program back in 2016. So as of next year, we'll be 10 years in operation. I serve as an associate pastor at Agape Perfecting Praise and Worship Center under the leadership of Pastor Sharon Riley. And I enjoy my passion for working with youth and with young men, seeing the transformation every single day. Not only do I direct this program that I founded, but I'm also a substitute teacher. So I'm able to be in the school system and middle school students at that. Yes, sixth, seventh, and eighth graders every single day. And it keeps me connected to the school system, because I recognize as I take assignments at the various schools that I have boys that attend those schools, I'm able to hold them accountable for their behaviors. And they come around the corner and say, Miss Things, what you doing here? And I'll be like checking on you. And so it's a wonderful thing to build relationship. And that's how we're able to have the success that we have. So thank you, Pastor Caldwell, for having us on tonight.
And good evening, everyone. I'm Darrick McGhee, pastor of Bible-based church in Tallahassee, Florida, as aforementioned. I am an anomaly. I've been pastoring going on 15 years, been in the preaching ministry a little over 25 years. But I also work as a political consultant. I've been doing that for 24 years by way of governmental lobbying, consulting work. And I also have my own company, Strategic Inflection Point. I provide business consulting and public speaking and executive coaching in that regard. And so all those mixtures come together. God really has opened amazing doors to do some amazing things, but I'll give it all up for the sake of ministry. And that's really where my heart and my passion is. And so excited about being on with each one of you tonight. Thank you so much, Overseer, for the opportunity, man.
Good evening. I'm Dr. Tammy Anderson, and thank you, Pastor Caldwell, for this opportunity. And thanks to each of you all who are also online sharing your experience strength. I have 24 years as a counselor, mental health and substance abuse. I am 23 years in ministry and 6 years as the founder of the House of Hope of Panama City, Florida. I also am a founder of a nonprofit organization, JUDOS, which stands for Juveniles Understanding Discipline, Order, and Service. It started in 2005 and will continue. I believe this makes our 20th year. To God be the glory. Co-founder of another nonprofit called Fresh Start Reentry Program for those who are coming out of incarceration. I presently work for chemical addictions recovery effort, providing for those who are on probation and those who are in drug court. But I'm really excited about the idea of being a part of this initiative and hearing all of the strategies. And Renee, I'm really excited about meeting you. But to each of you all, it is a honor just to be a part of this. So thank you again, Pastor Caldwell. It's a blessing to be here.
Thank you so much. My good friend and co-moderator, please introduce yourself.
Yes, good evening, everybody. Again, thank you so much for being with us tonight. My name is Brandon Johnson. I am a licensed minister in Church of God in Christ. 15 years this year preaching in the ministry. But also, like Darrick, I work in the political world as well as a government affairs personality for the Nonprofit Alliance, a statewide organization looking at strengthening the nonprofit sector and doing government advocacy. Tonight, I kind of want to set the stage of how we got here. Like many, the election night had jarring results for many, and we recognize that there is a huge push to strengthen within and to understand what we have to offer ourselves without looking necessarily externally for certain handouts or benefits, whatever words you may want to use. And so we got together the iConnect team to figure out how do we address the moment that we're in, the feelings of our community, and what can we do immediately to help benefit ourselves and meet the needs that we have within. And the first thing we thought about is that everybody always talks about Black businesses, but rarely do we ever see any real collective power and movement and how that impacts the church. While many don't want to address it, the truth is the business of the church, rather, is a business. There's overhead, there is insurance, there is often, employee cost and things of that nature that we have to address. But also, God has given us these marketplace ministries. And I'll be honest, growing up in the Church of God in Christ, we didn't often hear about marketplace ministry until rather late. But we know that that does exist. And so we thought that there may be a good intersection between the Black church and the Black businesses to figure out how do we work together? How do we utilize the gifts that God has given us, not just to benefit and enrich ourselves, but to truly meet the needs of our community. And so tonight we've gathered those who represent a myriad of issues and services and backgrounds, not just preachers, but those who work in different areas within the marketplace as well, to truly get a discussion around, again, how do we strengthen not just the Black church, but the Black businesses that can empower and motivate our congregation to then again be more empowered to become entrepreneurs if that's what the Lord has called them to. And so tonight, I kind of just want to start off with a generic a question for those who want to jump in and just kind of figure out what is the state of our Black businesses. We know that, the federal government is doing its thing with grants and funding. We know that Target is rolling back some DI things around entrepreneurs who have product in their stores. But just from a ground level basis, if anybody, I want to kind of go to Renee first, just to kind of talk through the nonprofit side. What are we seeing on the ground when it comes to Black nonprofits and the state of business as it currently stays right now in Florida?
I apologize. I had my phone on mute while you were talking. From 2020 to 2024, we saw the largest nonprofits starting here in the United States. If somebody dreamt it, they wanted to start a 501c3. Everybody wanted a 501c3. People come up to me daily. I heard it's a lot of grants available for. It's not. So what I tried to do is level out that mystery and that just folks lying actually and getting everybody's money to do all this kind of stuff. But there are some nonprofit organizations that are doing very, very good for the community, for the people. I deal with a lot of, from the largest churches to the smallest churches. I mean, from 20,000 on up congregations to 3. And I've noticed that the smaller ministries are doing the work, like the real grunt and grind work, while the bigger ministries have the ability to publicize. So that's the only difference. So what I try to do is come in and bridge that gap and make that smaller church known for their works and for their efforts. And like I said, from 2020 to 2024, because of COVID, because the way the world is changing and the benefits of having a nonprofit organization for tax purposes, a lot of people have just jumped on board. I always tell pastors that want to start a nonprofit, do well first so you can do good later. Have your own finances in order, right? Instead of depending on the nonprofit to finance you. So I usually get in trouble when I say that, so I'm gonna hush now.
No, say that.
Can
Say
I
that
chime
part
in
again. I
real
want us to
quickly?
caption that.
So in order to do good, you need to be doing well. Being a good steward of your own finances, your own taxes, your own congregation, and your own self, if you will. Because you can't give to others what you don't even possess yourself. Now, I'm not saying that if you have a drug nonprofit that you have had to be on drugs. I don't believe in that, because hurt is hurt. We know hurt in different areas. We know addiction in different areas. So I don't believe you have to have that experience. However, I do believe that you must have the wherewithal to look in the mirror first and say, God, what equipped me in order to help them? So so every day I get a call about somebody wanting to start a 501c3. I got $250. I want to start a 501c3. Okay, but then they don't keep it compliant with the 990s and the tax forms and everything that's due. They aren't serving the community. So we saw a lot of start, but we didn't see a lot sustained during these past few years.
Overseer, you want to jump in on that?
No, that was perfect. And I really wanted to make sure that she echoed that statement of, and I was writing down my notes. So can you make sure I've got it right? Do well first so that you can do good later.
Correct.
Is that right?
Yes.
I love it. Back to you, sir.
Pastor Anderson, I want you to jump in on that.
And thank you, because Sister Renee, that is the experience that I have shared as well, because individuals know that I will help them to do 501c3s and start businesses because of my experience from law school, right? So People have a tendency to always ask me, Tammy, can you help me write a grant? Help me write a grant. First of all, I'm really not even a really grant writer. I've just sat with, parts on a grant, so I know grant language, but I'm not. And I'll tell them in a heartbeat when they want to start small businesses, they'll come to me and says, well, I need a grant. I says, well, what grant are you writing to? And they just want me to write them a grant. And I'm like, for a small business. And I'm saying, you have to understand that if you want to write a grant, you got to have a business that's doing something free. What are you giving to the people? You want them to help you start a business, but that's not. There's small business loans. They're different like that, but everybody thinks there's free money out here. And
Amen.
everybody wants a 501c3, like everybody want to go on disability and think they can survive, instead of understanding. And I love what you just said. I'm with Pastor Caldwell. Do well before you, so that you can do good later. I like that, because that's what people are looking for, is someone to help them to do good without them putting the footwork in, the grassroots. They don't want to work. They want something free.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Absolutely. Now, Pastor McGhee, you have in your portfolio executive coaching, business coaching. In the last, let's say, 5 years, what have you seen post-pandemic in most of your sessions that may give you a trend if you were doing research around where we are, state of business, whether that's people are jumping into the marketplace or now people retracting from the marketplace? And how have you seen that play out in your business, both as a consultant in Tallahassee in the capital, but also in your one-on-one coaching that you have available?
Thank you for the question, man. It's a great question as well. So what I see a good amount of is um, bold ideas with minimal execution.
Mm,
And then I'll see um, people who I believe have it in them to do it, but they lack the self-confidence, right? I think and I argue this point all the time, as Black people, um, we come from innovators, we come from entrepreneurs, we come from a people who took nothing and made something out of it, right? That's in us. But you can't see that manifestation if there is no work ethic, if there's just you just being lazy, right? Like the expectation of success or achievement doesn't come just because you say it's going to come. It requires that work to be put in. A great concern, just in normal conversation, is we tend to forget what Dr. King said. Dr. King said, um, we talked about, he said, we see a man straighten his back out, he's going somewhere, because a man can't ride your back unless it's bent, right? It's
mhm.
our inability to really stand up and move forward with accountability. So I look at it from a business perspective, or just in consulting, it's it's the inability, it's the desire to do something big without knowing the steps that's necessary. Miss Renee made a good point, right, about this. They think about from a legality standpoint, right? Really understanding what the requirements are, not only to get started, but to maintain that which you've begun, right? Coming out of the church context, which is my entire upbringing, there's a tendency to throw things together and then say in Jesus' name. No, like there has to be a level of excellence, right? Be a level of righteousness in what we're doing and how we're doing it. And we'll bring it over into a business world as well, right? Where we want people to invest in what we're doing, but we're producing a product that's not worth talking about or investing in. And so I think it's critically important. I think, well, Ms. Renee was talking about what, right, want to do a 501c3. I was getting pushed hard to venture into that space for our church. And I had to be honest, like, listen, we're just not there. Right? Just several years ago, we're just not there. But it's an honest conversation with yourself and with your circle of realizing the person doing it down the street may be great, but they may be further along and have that honest conversation. It's detrimental to launch prematurely, right? And so that understanding, and so I see a great deal of that of people see that, Pastor Ings did something, so I'm gonna go do it. They didn't count up the cost that he had to count up to be able to do what he did. So they want to just mirror it 'cause they love the attention he's got. And I think you see that in business. I think you see that in the church setting as well, is realizing there may be some oil on what he's doing, that God has called him to do that, and let him do that versus me trying to compete with that. And that's a concern And I think same for us as a Black people who I'm proud to be, it's us realizing that there's so many people that can benefit from us if we do it the right way.
If we do it the right way. That's you said so many things in there. The one thing that comes to mind, I was doing a seminar a couple years ago, and I made the statement, and I offended some, but I literally said, I think faith is sometimes our biggest crutch. I think sometimes we put too many things by faith and not by works, and we forget that the Bible also says that faith without works is dead. And so again, like you said, sometimes we send everything on a prayer list. We're gonna hope to God we can pray, we can pay the mortgage, hope that God comes through and we can do things that are written in black and white in contract. And so that's a good point. As we're talking about this intersection of black business and black church, we cannot afford sometimes to let our faith override what the Lord ultimately says, render to Caesar's what is Caesar's. If you sign these contracts, if you go through with these paperwork, you have to be abreast on these compliance measures. And as somebody that works in the nonprofit field all day looking at policy, that is the biggest issue. We have a lot of nonprofits in the state of Florida, but
Mhm.
unfortunately, many don't know what's going on in Tallahassee. They don't know what's going on in DC when it comes to regulatory compliance measures. And again, we have to make sure we're doing things the right way. Again, going back to the opening statement, please do well first. Make sure you are good, and then that way you can do good later on. Pastor Ings, I have a different question for you to start. I want to talk mainly about this disconnect we find between generations. You have a very good position in this where you are able to reach the youth, but still, of course, live within your generation. How have you seen the youth interact with either this idea of entrepreneurship or even just supporting Black businesses, meaning that they're growing up in a very different time? Everything is on social media, what's trendy, this algorithm. They probably have greater exposure to Black businesses. What have you seen in some of your mentorship discussions?
Thank you, Brandon. I wanted to piggyback off something that the other speakers have spoken as it relates to starting a nonprofit and being able to have the follow through. When I started ministry, because I've been preaching for 27 years, but I planted a church back in 2005, but it was I'm sorry, in 2010. And it was in 2016 that I started Boys to Men Mentoring Program. But I'm gonna back up. When I started the ministry, I had college students. So, they're looking for opportunity, looking for jobs. So I had some seniors as well. I had families who were struggling. So the tithe and offerings were up and down. And so we knew immediately that, you know what, we're not going to survive like this. It's going to be, always trying to figure out how we're going to pay the musician, how we're going to be able to do this and do that. And so pinching pennies. And we knew that we just could not operate like that. And so it was when we tapped into marketplace ministry, which started the mentoring program, but it was the nonprofit organization that I began. But again, it was the foundational legwork that had to be done, and I put people around me who were smarter than me because I didn't understand all of the lingo. I didn't understand all of the ins and outs, but I made sure I had a CPA, and I made sure I had board members that understood the lingo, and to make sure that we stayed within compliance to make sure that we can handle what was coming our way. And after starting the mentoring program, tapping into marketplace ministry, recognizing there was a demographic of individuals that needed that type of support and needed that help, that's when we begin to get the wheels spinning and rolling, and then being able to find the grants. My wife is a grant writer. She don't like for me to advertise that, but she's the one after our third year of operating the program itself. So the first 3 years was from the heart because we had to prove who we were, that we had the passion, that we knew that God had given this to us, but at the same time we kept laying. We just kept being consistent in what we were doing. And so in this process of with working with youth, um, now everything is quick, fast, and in a hurry. Everything is microwavable. Everything is quick. With social media, our attention span is about 19 seconds because we're scrolling to the next thing. And sometimes this generation, they think that's how businesses are going to be built or ministry is going to be built. But no, you have to be willing to put in the work. And so I just use my own story, my own experiences to be able to say, hey, listen, what I have right now, it took hard work and determination. There were some levels of failure. There There were some things that I tried and it did not work and I had to try it again. Or there were some things that I was not ready for that I thought I wanted, but just because I saw someone else doing it, I thought because across the street it was golden, it was nice, it was good, but I wasn't ready. And when I began to sit down and really tap into the vision that God had given to me, and to know that, listen, what's coming to you is coming to you, but you got to do the legwork. You got to be patient. You have to be willing to do what's necessary. And so that's what we are constantly instilling into our young people as we're helping them, get jobs for the summer, career development, getting them ready for college and what that entails. But we let them know it's not going to fall on your lap. Nothing is quick. Nothing is fast. You have to sit down and put the work in. And so I think that's one of the values that we have to teach this now generation is that, listen, it takes work. You have to put the work in, put the time in, and nothing's going to happen overnight. And if it happens overnight, you better look out, because will it really, really stand? Does it really have the foundation? Does it really have the substance to be able to withstand what's getting ready to come next?
Overseer, jump in right there.
Absolutely. I want to make reference to a comment that we have on live from Miss Terry Foreman, and she is an accountant, and she's out of Jacksonville. And her comment says, many nonprofits don't have the skilled staff to oversee or manage contract compliance. And I want to take it back to Renee to kind of echo and piggyback off that comment to talk about what's the best strategy in scaling your business, knowing it's okay to be small, but steward the small so that you can manage your great seasons. Can you talk about that a little bit more?
You're muted.
It's
Renee, you're muted. We
Re-
can't hear you.
Renee, you're muted.
And I was saying some good stuff too.
We just gonna play back.
Okay, but I was saying that I teach pastors and church leaders that there are 5 stages to ministry. The first is the birthing stage. That's when you have the vision, everything is good, there's energy, everybody's adapting. I love the Lord with all my heart. He heard my cry. And that's the very first stage. That's that birthing fresh stage. And I do these stages because I also compare them in business. Then the next stage is vitality. And this is when the church experiences a growth in membership, right? So from that excitement, that base level, now we have a growth in membership. And then there's an equilibrium stage, right? So that's after a period of growth, the church enters a phase of just leveling off, all right? We ain't really growing much, but we just kind of leveling off. And then they experience a decline. So it's like, whoop, whoop, whoop. So then they experience a decline. And that can occur if the church fails to continue to teach, if they fail to address internal issues, if they fail to look at a person as a spiritual being instead of an individual just giving an offering. And then after decline, there's that final stage of death. A church really can die. And in some cases, they reach the point where they're unable to continue because of finances, because nobody's attending. I'm going to a church this weekend. The guy started a church and nobody came. Not one soul came. Just he and his wife and children. And I said, sir, that's a Bible study. That's family worship. Let's just go ahead and call it what it is. And then because we have to get our ego out of this thing. So how does that compare to business? Everybody is not meant to be an entrepreneur. Somebody got to work for somebody. So I don't necessarily buy into everybody's an entrepreneur. Somebody has to be a follower. Somebody has to do the work. Somebody has to pay attention to the detail. If not, if we don't have that strong base, then we go from decline to death, decline to death. And we just repeat that cycle over and over. And I see a lot of businesses, that's what they're doing. They're just repeating the cycle over and over. And they aren't entrepreneurs, they're self-employed, meaning they must be employed by every day. They're selfish, just the boss, but they're still employed. They can't get away, you know, and enjoy life because they got to report to the business. Well, you might as well go work for the state if that's the case. So I'm kind of very real about that, and teaching business owners, first of all, evaluate if you need to be an entrepreneur. That's the first thing. Just, you know, look at yourself. Because you're tired at work, that might mean you need a vacation. You know, not I need to, or, you know, a lot of it's just ego. From men and women starting churches to people starting, but it's just ego. You know, humble yourself, go sit under somebody and, you know, sit down somewhere. So that's what I found. I own a number of businesses. My sister and I own her business, TC Bakery. So we have these conversations. So it's not something we just talk about, but I really try to instill that in our everyday life.
Let me expound on one thing in particular you said, because my next question is going to get to how do we implement this marketplace ministry in our churches, but on that particular lens. Everybody's not meant to be a CEO. Somebody has to be the secretary. Somebody got to be the janitor. Somebody has to be the mailman. Somebody has to do these jobs. But that's not how we often, number one, preach it, but also that's not how we often imitate it as well. We always go into it with it, you know, if the Lord called me to ministry, I have to be the pastor, not the usher. Because ushering is not ministry for some reason. Or the deacon is not ministry. If the Lord called me to be an entrepreneur, it's not to go assist Stephen with his business and be his government affairs person. I have to be the CEO. How do we get this generation that wants to be so independent, that wants to be in charge so much? How do we implement marketplace ministry, but with a strategic, healthy platform to be honest and say, you won't be the leader. You
Right.
may be a supporter, but your support is just as vital as the CEO's vision. How do we get to that place in our ministries?
For me, what I always convey, build the people and the people will build the church. Build you and you can build a business. Build you. Build the people. I see all these capital campaigns that I'm, you know, always called to set up. And I always start off, what have you built the people? Have you taught them about stewardship? Have you taught them not stewardship just of money when it's offering time, but stewardship of their time, their talent? So build the people. Meet the needs of the people, because ultimately that's what all of us are called to do. If a church is lacking in something, they haven't gone out to evangelize, because everything that's meant to be for the church is in the church. God sends them. So if we don't go out and get them, then we just look crazy. But everything God intended to happen in the church, he puts the people there to make that vision come to pass. If not, go check your evangelism. Go check your discipleship.
Renee, you preaching.
I think we start with education. I'm sorry, that was a long answer.
So let me jump on that too. And I don't have anything to dispute anything you said, Miss Renee, because I agree with all of that.
Yeah.
I think about when I first got started. So I grew up in the Black Baptist church, right? I have to clarify, it wasn't just Baptist, it's Black Baptist, right? But I grew up under older preachers and an older pastor. And maybe not older by age, but definitely older by years. And so in the context I came up in, you said you got called into ministry. You didn't go from a calling on one Sunday to the pulpit on the next Sunday to preaching the third Sunday to pastoring the fourth Sunday. No, what they did was they sent you to do things in the church, right? Go help clean the bathroom, go work, you know, in this ministry, go do the following things. Before you ever embarked the pulpit, you were dispatched to go through things. Then you went through biblical training, right? I went through catechism, all those type of things before you ever even got into the pulpit, before you ever opened the Bible and preached, all those things. But before all that happened, you really were put in scenarios where They were requiring and testing your service. And what we're seeing now, I think when in church, but also in business, is Renee made a really good point, right? Like people get so disgruntled on their jobs, and then they'll go start a business. And then what happens is because they've never been really taught stewardship, taught discipline, taught, savings, things of that nature, they then start wasting finance. And next, they're in front of the church needing benevolence. And now the church is trying to almost fund the lifestyle of a person who, by the way, needs benevolence because they're lacking on, let's say, their rent, for example, but that person has not changed their way of living, right? They're still wearing the latest whatever, right? And so what we see is, I think two things have really taken place. I think the first thing that's taken place is we've really lost the mentor-mentee relationship. I mean that in business, but also even in church, right? Church may be the older pastor, the younger pastor. You've lost that. And I think as our churches have gotten younger, right? I grew up with church mothers, right? Where there was they expected, right? You can't do certain things in church and act certain way. Now that's old fashioned. Now that's traditional, right? Now that's overreach. And so now, we've lost that. And so now that respect isn't there, but that mentor mentee, right? Pastor Arthur Jackson III out of Miami talks about the 3 P's, right? He said you have the patterns, you have the partners, you have the pupils. The patterns are those who are doing or have done what you desire to do at some point. They're the model. Your partners are those on your level, right? These are your colleagues. And then the pupils are those that you ultimately are pouring into as mentees. He said, with your pattern, you may not spend a lot of time with them, but in one encounter, they invest so much in you that it keeps you going. Your partners are the people that you interact with on a regular basis, iron sharpening iron. He also argued that your pupils can't handle seeing you bleed. They can't handle seeing you struggle because they look up to you. He said the challenge that we have is that you have people who never submitted to being a pupil now trying to be somebody else's pattern. And so you think about that through business, right? You have a great idea, but you have no business acumen about yourself, right? You don't have any understanding. So instead of you being somebody's apprentice, now you want to launch out. And then when it doesn't work out, instead of doing some self-assessment, it's everybody else's fault, right? Nobody wanted to support you. Or if somebody does provide constructive criticism, you equate that to somebody hating on you. Well, it may not be hating on you. They may be trying to help you understand. I'm gonna give this quick story and I'm gonna pass it on. So our church several years ago, 2021, we decided by the God's design, we were gonna buy our building and all the land we were on, and God favored us. But I remember just from a business standpoint, we got to make sure that we have at least 3 years of financials, right? We go to the bank to have this conversation. So we did. Went to the bank, had a conversation, and the lady said to me, she said, Pastor McGhee, she said, you're the first predominantly Black church that we dealt with in a long time, if ever, that has their financial records in order to this level. She said these words here that really hit me. She said, most Black churches that we deal with, they operate in faith, not in finances. And it hit me. She said, they come in here, they gonna name it and claim it, they gonna lay hands, they gonna speak in tongue, but they ain't got no finances about themselves. And she said the days are gone where banks are financing 80 and 90 and 100% loans. They ain't doing that no more. You got to bring some skin to the game. And so I think about that, whether it's in business, whether it's in ministry, in that regard, right? Is the understanding that why duplicate what Miss Renee is doing? I can just submit to that understanding and gain that. The second thing I think the challenge is we see each other as competition versus as colleagues, right? So overseer has a vision, right? His vision is very clear. He asked me to be there for one day. I couldn't make it happen based on my schedule. He said, what about this panel? I'm happy to be on the panel. Versus me trying to do a similar event the same day, and now you got to pick which one you're going to go to. But the competitive spirit, we're seeing a lot, even in the church now, right? Everybody, I mean, you got over there, Doc. What you doing over there, Doc? Everything is competitive versus colleagues. And so what happened is we've lost sight of kingdom, and now we fighting over corners. We've lost sight of business, and now we're trying to compete with each other. And so what happens is when people get confused, you know what they end up doing? They don't pick one or the other. They don't pick either one of you. And we got to be mindful of that, whether it's ministry, whether it's business, any area, is a realization that we can do so much more together than we could ever do against each other.
And as you were talking, it's the same reason people church hop.
There's other reason. Correct.
Yes.
Correct.
Just
Yeah.
laugh.
Yeah. When people are saying, man, I got 10,000. Okay. Well, how many of them are new converts, right? Versus transplants, right? We're supposed to be winning souls, right? And so you're right. No, listen, you better go. Come on in here, Pastor Ings or Pastor Anderson. I'll take over this panel. This is my topic right here. I love this.
Well, you all are more well versed than I am in this area, but I have a testimony.
You're being too humble, sister. You're being too humble.
And I'm being honest. It's like I look at. I'm really grateful to God for the experience of the nonprofit before I even started a church. So I learned what not to do. I messed up a lot, and so I learned from my mistakes because I had so much passion until I wasn't business minded. And that really kind of it stunted my growth for the program because God sustained me. I'm gonna be honest with you all. My passion helped sustain me, but because I probably would not have lasted as long as I have, but because of my honesty with the business and what I was doing in the lives of children, people came and supported me. And because people support people, they don't really support programs. And so they trusted me. But getting back to where I want to go is, Renee, you said something that really just like stuck with me, because this is what I've experienced as a pastor. Now, I started this church probably off of what I was saying, the faith. But I recognized somewhere that it could not sustain and grow. And so as I prayed, I realized that we had to rebuild. And so I'm looking at your stages. I wrote down your stages because I'm actually learning a lot, but it's some great confirmation to that I've been led by some good people. I've had some great mentors in my life, and I do a shout out to Dr. Roderick Robinson. But I have just recognized that I need to rebuild from within. And I recognized a lot of the people in my church, they came off the street, right? And so we're that small church that has really grown, but we're that small church that we're outreach. So yes, we go out there into the highways and the byways. We give away food, we give away clothes. We have church on the street. We take it to the street, and we do what our vision is. And I try to make sure I do not duplicate any other church. I do what God told me that I'm supposed to do. And sometimes I have saw us going that way and I had to pull us back in. But there was something you said, and I'm telling you, it does work. I've been rebuilding within because I realized I had to build my people, because God told me I had what I needed in the church. I didn't have to look for it on the outside. And I began to speak that from the pulpit. What we need is in the church, like what I need is within me. And I don't have to stop looking for things external to fix what's internally wrong with myself. And that's the same with the church. So I had to teach my people, and I've been teaching them, not just being good stewards to pay tithes, but helping them with financial resources by bringing people in to teach them work ethics, work etiquette, also how to budget, and financial resource people to come in to help them to learn how to live on their, on their own means, and not be like the Joneses, and to live within their means. And so that they can tithe, so they can pay their bills, and teach them this, because they never knew. Like I said, you have to understand where they came from. And I had to recognize where they came from. And so now our church has done a turnaround. And I'm seeing now the finances are building. And I understood that, Dr. McGhee, is like, when I went to the bank 2 years after the church was founded to buy a church. And we're not only dealing with pandemic in Panama City, we're dealing with the residue of Hurricane Michael. So a lot of our churches took a hit because a lot of churches was torn apart, literally, and had to be restored, right? So we had to learn how to start from scratch, a lot of churches, because they didn't have insurance. So in the process of all of that, I have, I don't know, I've been doing some things that you're saying, and it just blows my mind because I know I don't have that much sense. but I'm gleaning from you. So you keep teaching me. I'm learning. Y'all keep teaching. I came on here to learn. I don't know what Caldwell thought I had to give you all, but I can't. And I'm learning some stuff. Y'all help a sister out so I can help my people.
Pastor Ings, I wanna reshape this for you because I think that we're getting to a point here. We find so many young people who are extremely gifted and extremely talented, but
Mhm.
rarely in the church do we have the infrastructure to hone those gifts, curate those gifts, and then
Yes.
release those gifts in a prepared way.
Yes.
From your experience, what can the church take tonight to go into either their youth ministries, create a new auxiliary for ministry, for marketplace development, whatever that looks like for their structure? What are some tactics they can use to, number one, go recruit these young people, but then also make sure that we're meeting the actual needs and the gifts that God has given these young people while they're in our ministries?
Great question, sir. And I too, like Pastor Anderson, I'm learning a lot on here tonight. Um, I feel that it boils back down to levels of discipleship. That once we're able to capture them for whether that's through outreach or their friend bringing them to church or something outlandish happens in their life that drives them to the ministry. Once we get them rooted and grounded, it's that discipleship piece, just being able to make sure that they are being rooted and grounded in the Word of God, giving them the truth. Because, I come from the old school, everything was faith, 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 but it wasn't a whole lot of practical points that I could take home and leave with and be able to apply to my everyday life. Yes, you're telling me that the door is going to open. Yeah, it's going to open, but it's going to open at a certain time. But what do I do while I'm waiting? How do I maintain myself while I'm waiting on that mate or waiting on that spouse or waiting on that next opportunity? What do I do in the in between time? And I think sometimes that's where things kind of get lost. And I heard Pastor McGhee talk about the mentor mentee relationship, to where we have to be able to maintain those levels of trust, being transparent with wisdom, being able to share and to say, hey, listen, I understand what you're looking for, but this is what it is, giving them the raw truth, and then hand walk them, help them understand, okay, listen, if you do step one, step two, possibly you'll get to step number three. But being able to hang in there with them, build that relationship, be honest with them. And I think sometimes that's where things can really begin to get misconstrued, because we just don't have that piece of that discipleship to walk them through their processes, to stay with them, even if they have a downfall, even if they, seem to step away from what you're teaching, but being willing to receive them back in love and say, hey, son, you messed up, but you know what? I said, yet love you. I'm going to treat you just like the agape love that Christ gives unto us every single day. Come on back. Let's be restored, and let's keep moving. So I think it really boils back down to the levels of partnership, discipleship, and being able to hand walk them through their process until we see the end result of transformation that we want to see.
Amazing. Listen, we're getting close to time. We have one more topic we want to touch, but before then, I want to say this. Pastor Renee has a business. Pastor McGhee has a business. Oh, Renee, you don't have, okay. Prophetically, she has something you need to get in contact with.
I'm not a
Pastor
pastor.
Anderson. Oh, okay, okay. Sister Renee has a business. Pastor Anderson has a business. Pastor Ings, if you don't, you might want to think about it. Listen, everybody on the screen tonight has said something that in normal situations you are paying a good price for, right? In the world we live in, everybody has an e-course. Everybody has a seminar. Everybody has a package that they can sell on how to do all of this. For the last at least 40 minutes, you have heard things that people are flying out for, are bringing people into their churches and charging registration for, and we have given it for absolutely free. But please don't be selfish. Please share this with somebody you know who is in one of those five stages. Maybe they're birthing a church, maybe they have leveled out, or maybe they told you in private that they are thinking about closing the doors. Whatever that stage is, something was said tonight for that particular person or church. We want to make sure that this reaches that person, because God did not orchestrate this panel tonight out of happenstance. This was something birthed years ago in the heavens that the Lord has released for this particular time and moment that we live in. And so before we wrap this tonight, I want to make sure that we again acknowledge the fact that if you book Pastor McGhee, he will pray for you probably for free, but he's going to give you some advice for a cost. If you talk to Sister Renee, she might pray for you for free. But at some point, business does come into the equation. So while we have this chance to get some of this free information, please don't be selfish. Take it in and then share it out with somebody else. Overseer, I want you to introduce this last topic.
Listen, that is such great wisdom, my brother. And first of all, thank you for being with us, each of you all, our panelists, and to our guests. And we're in the last 10 minutes, and I want to kind of shift a little bit because we're talking a lot about community, but there's one component in the church, particularly in the local church, that we have not maximized on, and that is technology. And a lot of times we have a tendency to allow technology to be a replacement of community. But I don't believe that AI should be a replacement of community. I believe it should be an enhancement of community. So I want to talk to you all tonight, and I want to ask you all tonight. Everyone can jump in and give a comment on this because this is our last kind of cliffhanger. Y'all got to come back on the 29th to get the rest of this. But I want you all to jump in and talk about how do we find the balance between AI and local community, AI and local church, AI and local business. And let's start with Dr. McGhee.
I think you said it, my overseer. I mean, I think, it should not be a replacement, it should be an enhancement. Um, there's been an evolution in the local church, right? The foundation is still Christ. The foundation is still the word of the Lord. But there's been an evolution to this in just the normal local church worship, right? There was a time where, you know, you weren't allowing instruments, and then you had an evolution, the instruments started being incorporated. There was allowance where you had all choirs. Now you got choirs and praise teams, right? Right. All these things, none of these things are taken away from the foundation of the church, taken away from the purity of what the gospel is, but they're tools. I think that the best way that we protect community and utilize or enhance AI is going back to what Miss Renee said at the very beginning. Like, we have to know who we are, right? We have to really understand that if we don't have a solid foundation and a clear identity, then AI or anything else now becomes one more thing we're reaching for to try to um, name, claim, identify who we are in that regard, right? Technology should not be the big bad wolf. We shouldn't be scared of it. It is a utensil. Every church, when COVID hit in 2020, every church became, a multi-ministry church, both in wall and basically virtual, right? I don't care if you had 15,000 or you had 15, right? If you were trying to minister to the people God entrusted to you as a pastor, you had some level of a virtual church. If you were technology savvy or not, right? You had it because you were trying to get the word to the people, right? So there was no longer a delineation in that regard. And so AI is important. Now, I would say to pastors, right? AI should not replace you putting time in the study. It should not replace you putting time in devotion. It should not replace you putting time in private time with the Lord, right? It can be an enhancement, but it definitely shouldn't be a replacement. And so I think it's important to understand that. Let me also close this, and I'll pass it on to the next brother or sister. Some of the best advice I got during the height of COVID, and when we opened the doors, a dear pastor friend of mine was talking to me one day, and he said, "Man, you know, my sons run my media ministry, right? His sons were like latter teenage year, early 20s, and at my church now, like my son, my nephew, and some others in there, and I realize that there is a contribution that this generation of young people can bring to the church where they may not be in your choirs or be ushered. There's a contribution, again, an enhancement in that regard, but never to the point of replacing anything that is gospel, that is Bible, but it's an enhancement of that regard of further communicating. I would submit to us that our desire is to get the message of Christ to as many as possible, and we can utilize technology in that regard. And there are people that you may never meet that may be literally online members of your church, right? So there's ways you can utilize these devices, but never to the substitute of what God has called and requires of you to do. And I'm gonna pass it to Pastor Ian since I think we're gonna do that in this closing, right? We're gonna pass it on, brother. So tag
Well,
you
you
in.
in the spirit, because I was going to him next.
Thank you, Pastor McGhee.
Yes.
And I too agree with what you have spoken and also the statement from Overseer Caldwell. Enhancements, not replacements. Technology, yes, has its place, but we cannot say that we serve the all-knowing God, omniscient God, all-knowing God, who has a foot in our past, a foot in our future, and yet stands in our present, and not know what's getting ready to take place next in the life of the church, in the life of your business, and it just future holistically. And so I think it boils back down to our levels of devotion, our discipleship, and staying in that close proximity of relationship with Him that's going to help us with this next generation. And yes, we understand the enhancement of technology, but that should not be the source. I'll just say it that way. It can be a real resource, but it should not be the source of what we totally depend on. We have to stand on God's word and what He promised in His word to us and for us, and know that because He knows all, He can direct us where we need to go. He will give us the answers when we stand in those places, in those meetings, in front of those people, whatever we need. He's right there for us. And I think that's where our belief and our trust has to go back to.
Absolutely. Renee, talk to us about, I know because you love technology.
I do.
Uh,
I do.
Talk to us about that balance.
I teach pastors how to properly use AI. And the first question and the first statement I make is from Colossians 3:23. Whatever you do it as unto the Lord.
There it
working
is.
heartily, right? And yada, 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 but He shall recompense you, right? So that's the base of where we start. That's the foundation. I don't care if you have a microphone or speaking in a cup. If it's not unto the Lord, it's in vain. So what I believe God does with AI and technology is to lift Him more, because our mission is to lift Christ. So sometimes we take that mission and we lift ourselves, we lift the praise team, we lift the pastor. But Christ said, if I be lifted up, I'll draw men to me. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you got a microphone to lay the sound system. If you don't lift up Christ, it's all in vain. Okay, so that's it. That's all.
Listen, I thank you. And I want to shift a little bit because what you shared earlier, Dr. Anderson, I don't want us to walk over it. And you talked about how your passion is what sustained you. And I want you to kind of close us out and talk to us about the benefit of having passion and ministering to that person who might be feeling like they're on E. But give them a word of encouragement, whether or not they are a business owner or a pastor. Give them a word of encouragement that's going to help reboot them as we've been giving them strategy tonight.
Well, in the reverence and honor to the late Pastor Terrence Bolger, who reminded me so often how God had blessed me to be a person or a pastor that's touchable, and how impactful that is in my ministry. And that's because I believe from passion to purpose to promise. in order for us to understand our purpose, our purpose comes from our passion. And someone mentioned that, I think that was Miss Renee, that talked about the mere fact that no, you don't have to have that personal experience always, but you might have it indirectly. And so, because of that, I guess I was thinking about the gap that's between the church and community, and that's how we feel that gap is how we connect and become relational with people, is by being able to be connected with people. And so you cannot impact or change people if you can't connect to people. And so, therefore, you have to operate in your purpose. And your purpose is typically defined by your passion. And your passion comes from your experiences. And therefore, that's when the promises of God is being revealed. Is that you know when you're walking in purpose. And when you're walking outside of your purpose, it's almost impossible for you to impact people and to be able to make a difference in the lives of people, which is our community. Even though someone else mentioned something about the mere fact that how we make sometimes you have to be able to connect to your people in your church, as far as being able to that was you, Pastor Ings. You were mentioning about with young adults being transparent. I'm so passionate about young people. That's why I started a youth program. I wanted to give back what was so freely given to me. And somebody prayed for me. Somebody prayed me out of where I came from, 30 years in recovery. And so, because somebody prayed for me, I have a genuine passion for people who struggle in any kind of area. It doesn't have to be drugs or whatever, but I can identify the struggle and I can feel it. And so that's why passion is so important. Even though you have a business mind, and you are mentally equipped financially with numbers or whatever, but if you don't have passion mixed in the middle of that, and that compassion of God, and that agape love of God, then everything you do is in vain. There's no love in it. So there has to be a love for what you do, a godly love.
Amen.
We got to be able to look beyond people's faults and see their needs. And that's what God does, and that's what we have to imitate.
Amen. 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 Listen, I think tonight was a phenomenal session. And I want to say to those of you that are watching and that will be watching later, this is a precursor to what's going to take place on March 29th for our Black Church and Black Business Summit. I want to encourage you, if you're still trying to make the decision whether or not you want to come, I want to challenge you. Rearrange your schedule, because your church, your business will not um, uh, be at a loss, and every one of us will be able to benefit from the conversations that we're going to have. Again, this is a Black church and Black business summit. It's not a Black pastors summit. It's the Black church. A lot of times we have the tendency to only speak to the pastor, and the pastor's elevating, but sometimes the pastor needs assistance from a different voice,
Yes.
so that the different voice can echo what the pastor has been teaching. And then we all can elevate together. So this is for the entire body of Christ. I want to challenge you. Come join us March 29th, 4409 Bluntstown Highway. And we are going to have a wonderful time of discussion, of inspiration, as we are talking about all things business and all things church. Again, to my panelists, thank you for being with us tonight, for your insight, for your wisdom that you have shared. It was phenomenal. And I echo the words of Brandon. You all, what they are sharing, there are people who are paying $5,000 for. There's people who are paying, insane amount of money just to get the wisdom that we have got in this short span of time. So again, Thank you very much. And you all have a great night. And I hope to see you during the Black Church and Black Business Summit.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And everybody, let's not be strangers.
Yeah. Is it possible we can have contact information of the individuals that panelists?
Yes, ma'am.
Stephen, I have
Do you all
no-
mind sharing?
No, I don't
share my
mind.
information.
Don't mind at all.
Okay, I'm gonna put my stuff.
Are you putting it in the chat?
Yes.
Okay.
Or we can get it from, if you don't
Stephen, I
mind.
think, has everybody, so I don't
Yes,
mind
can
him
you
sharing
just
mine.
send it?
Right, right.
Yes, thank you. Pastor Caldwell, you can send it.
Yes.
Thank you. Good evening to each one of you all. Thank you. I
Well,
enjoyed you.
Everybody have a good
Good
night.
night.
Good
Thank
night.
you, overseer. Thank you, Brandon.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much.